at least from where I'm sitting, October afternoon as we are getting ready for our second webinar of this current season. And so today we are going to be joined by Juanne George, who has become very well known around our music care circles. And she is going to be walking us through her webinar on music and de-escalating responsive behaviors. Juanne, as I'll explain in her bio in a brief moment, is involved both in the certified program as an organization and as an individual, and is just a very inspirational person in terms of the work she's doing, especially with music and dementia care. And so, a little bit about us. We are rolling out our season. I can't believe it's already our second webinar. But as always, we have our kind of at the beginning of webinars, we talk about what's going on in our own community. And so, up and coming very soon, we have our Music Care Conference. In fact, that's going to be on Friday, November the 14th. I'll talk about that in just a moment. But we also have coming out in November and December, we're going to have a new virtual learning studio on using guitars in care, which will be really awesome. That's one to support those of you that may have had a little basic knowledge, maybe played a chord or not even played a chord or two on a guitar, and want to bring guitar into your life or into your programming. And so, as I mentioned, it is conference season. Both we are traveling around as an organization, attending conferences, but we're also hosting conferences. And so, our conference is coming up Friday, November the 14th at Metalworks Institute in Mississauga. It is the power of a song in dementia care, which is really super appropriate to today's topic and title. And just a couple comments about our conference. It is selling out, actually. We are very close to being sold out in person. It is at Metalworks Studio in Mississauga, which, if you don't know, Metalworks is one of the premier recording studios as well as an educational program in recording, and it's owned by Gil Moore, who was in the band Triumph. So it's a pretty cool place. It's the location where they've had touch points with Drake, industry leaders, as well as anyone and everyone, has really gone through Metalworks, either actually having their music recorded there or produced there. They worked with Celine Dion, Tina Turner, Drake, other people, as I mentioned, and it is actually owned by Gilmore and folks from Triumph. So it's going to be a little bit of a different conference for us, and we are bringing together leading experts to talk about music and dementia. Dr. Lee Bartel will be talking about the impact of music and music on the brain. There will be an in-person experiential hosted by our own executive director, which will be kind of a neat releasing of that. We'll release more about that at the actual conference itself, but it's a pretty cool event. And we have Dr. Taylor Kurta. We'll be talking about demystifying using creativity in dementia. So a very cool topics. We also have it's hybrid. So if you can't attend in person, you can attend virtually. And so just an FYI, if you aren't able to snag one of those final seats in person, you can certainly join us virtually. And so, what about our music care training? We have a music care training level up one coming up in a few weeks, October 14th, 15th, actually next week. Apologies. Then we have a level two coming up in mid-November and a level three in January. If you are somebody, though, that already has a level two and are looking at starting a level three before January, certainly, especially those that are involved with certification for organizations, please reach out to Tanya, as always, or your music care facilitator, Jill. And moving along, upcoming webinars. Next month is really exciting. We actually are working featuring a rec therapist on that webinar is We're Better Together, a glimpse in collaborative practice. In December, we're really featuring the beautiful work of Shelley Neal, a therapeutic musician with a harp at the bedside. And then coming up in January is Leslie Butza. She's a music therapist. She's also an arts outreach specialist, and she will be talking about engaging communities through arts programming. coming. So some exciting stuff coming up actually over the next few months. And as always, there's our QR codes. Please follow us, and you'll hear more about what's coming. It's a great way to keep up to date on the happenings and the out and abouts of Room 217. You'll also, if you follow us, you'll be able to know when our blogs are coming out. We have some pretty great blogs. A lot of them have been written by Jill Wortley, who is here on the call. Just a shout out to Jill for the great work she does in her blog series, and as well as other authors and creatives. So who is Juanne George? Juanne is a master's prepared registered nurse with over 15 years of experience serving the elderly community. Her background includes orthopedics and neurology, mental services, acute medicine, and long-term care. While working in long-term care, Juanne has served in various roles, some of which are being the charge nurse, RA MDS coordinator, and manager of clinical informatics and quality. She is currently working as the director of dementia care, an innovative position, extremely innovative position, introduced by Glen Hill Terrace, a Durham Christian homes community. Juanne is the site team lead in charge of implementing the music care program across the home and has been instrumental in leading the home through the organizational certify process with Room 217. She also recently completed individual certification and is a music care advocate. So on that note, I will stop sharing and give a very, very warm welcome to Juanne. And just as a process, I'll be monitoring the chat. And if you have any questions for Juanne as she's working through her presentation, please drop them in the chat. And we'll kind of go along and I'll facilitate Q&A as we work through the webinar today. But please welcome Juanne.
Thank you so much, Dawn, for that warm introduction, and thank you to all of you for tuning in. I'm just going to start by sharing my screen so you can see my presentation.
Perfect. Thanks, Juanne.
Okay. All right, so thank you so much. I'm just going to move you guys to one side so I can see. Okay, thank you. So thank you so much. As Dawn has said, I'm Juanne George. I'm the Director of Dementia Care at Glen Hill Terrace. And then Glen Hill Terrace is one of the homes which is involved with Durham Christian Home. And at this home, we are going through the organizational certify. So today, what I'm sharing is part of our MCARP, so our Music Action Research Project. And what the home is doing is looking at the use of resident preferred music in improving responsive behaviors. So we're taking more of a health promotional approach to de-escalating behaviors and to improving resident care across the home. So I'm happy to be seeing all of your faces and sharing about this wonderful initiative the home is doing, but also for meeting residents at the point of their needs. Because, you know, especially living with dementia, many residents are in a state where they just need a familiar face. And as many of you may know, music can be that warm place where you can connect with people. We can meet across cultures and we can interact with residents. So I'm very excited to share with you what the home is doing. So today I will be presenting to you on during this presentation. I want to acknowledge the land from which I'm presenting. So here at Glen Hill Terrace, we acknowledge that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our community is located. Today, this area is the home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region, so the entire region, forms a part of the traditional and treaty territories of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nations, the Mississaugas peoples, and the Treaty of the Chippewa of Georgia Island First Nations. So it is on these ancestral and territory lands, treaty lands, that we live, visit, and provide care, and from which I am meeting with you today to engage in this exchange. So we thank all those who came before us for giving us the opportunity to continue to engage as we do today. So a little bit of agenda, so you could follow with me through my presentation and what I'm talking about. And as I'm going through the presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to stop me, Dawn, if you see questions as well. And I'm happy to answer in the moment. That way we don't lose track of what slide we're on and what question is related to that slide. So we're going to be looking at the community need as to why we thought this MCARP will be a good topic of discussion and examination. We're going to be looking at how it integrated into our existing programming within the home. And for those of you who are familiar with Music Care by Room 217 and their approach to domains of music care, I will go over which music domains our MCARP falls in within. We're looking at what resources the home has utilized to make the MCARP successful. Then I'll be going over the actual plan, implementation, and review of our music care research project. So to start off with, what is the community need we are addressing? So across the home, Glen Hill Terrace on a regular basis reviews our data and look at how we can improve resident care. So it was during one of these internal reviews in point-click care that we noticed that we're having an increase in responsive behaviors across the home. So we wanted to take an approach that was resident-centered. So we were looking at music and the Music Care Action Research Project as one of the interventions we can put in place as a non-pharmacological approach towards reducing responsive episodes. So in addition to our behavioral supports portfolio, we were using this MCARP as a need to reach and care for our residents. So how are we integrating this into our programming? So as discussed, and as Dawn highlighted, dementia care is a brand new department in Ontario. And in the news, and some of you may have noticed, there's been a lot of talk about how residents living with dementia, the population is expanded across the region. And because of this expanse, the Alzheimer's Society is predicting at least 14 million people are living with dementia, and there will be many more in the future. So to meet that need, the government has created additional funding to support residents who are living with dementia. And Glen Hill Terrace, as an innovative community, has preemptively created a department. So this is its first of its kind across Ontario to specifically cater to the needs of residents. So the dementia care department, just to give you a little bit of background, we will be, assessing residents living with dementia, looking at how we can be more person-centered in our approach, but also emotional based. So meeting them where they are, whether it is having to create an agenda to show them where they can be at the during the day, or it is, finding things that they can do to remain engaged. So a strength-based approach to increase their ability to be active as long as possible. So those are what we're doing with this department. But the dementia care also includes the behavioral support department, which addresses residents who are having agitation in dementia and how we approach them and, partner with their families in promoting an environment where they can thrive. So that's what this department includes. So when you're integrating music into this department, it's using music to holistically connect with those residents and meet their needs as well. So, we're very excited and happy to be launching this department, and we have staff that are dedicated to caring to residents in our home living with dementia. So it is very exciting because it's all new to us, and we're also integrating music into that care as well. So if we are successful in this MCARP initiative, one of the things that would benefit the residents and the home too is to have a decrease in the number of responsive episodes, which means that there's a decrease in the time frontline staff need to spend on de-escalating responses. It also leads to the improvement of the publicly reported worsened behavior and improved behavior indicators, because we're hoping to have positive success and a deposit of time to engage residents in other activities, such, as maybe being able to be engaged with more food-related activities, or sorting, or even singing or dancing, that sort of thing for staff to do, instead of spending a lot of time de-escalating responses. Sorry, I just want to pause for a second. Is there any questions so far, John?
I I don't see anything.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
And actually, just as we're stopping, just a reminder, if you have a question, throw it into the chat and Joanne will pause maybe as she goes through every few slides and we'll ask. Thanks.
Yeah. So as part of Music Care by Room 217, the certified process, there you go through level 1, level 2, and level 3 training, as Dawn had indicated, and you learn more about the domains of music care. And the domains of music care the home is addressing through this initiative is musicking. So musicking is the spontaneous use of music to connect with people in that moment. So that's what we will be doing with our MCAR, as well as we're using targeted programs to say when that music will be available for residents, and the use of devices or technology to make the music available on the front line so staff have access to it and residents have access to it. We will also be training our staff on how to implement the initiative, and it took a bit of research to know how to and how to assess the effectiveness of the initiative. So, so in order to implement everything, it takes a bit of finances, right? Because in order to have the devices, in order to train the staff, in order to connect with families, it takes a bit of finances to get those things available. So we had, of course, use that as a resource, as well as human capital, right? Human health resources to actually do the behind the scenes work, as well as to implement the initiative. But what is the actual initiative? What are we actually doing? That's the question I'm going to be answering right now. So our Music Care Action Research Project, the question we sought to look at is what engaging in musicking prior to and during care interventions lead to improved behavioral outcomes. So we're really trying to look at when we're playing music ahead of time and during the care, what the residents respond positively to staff assisting with care. So whether the care is providing a shower, providing assistance with toileting, or providing personal hygiene to residents, the use of music during that care, how would that lead to improved behavioral outcomes? So that's what we're examining. So who is our target population? So who are the residents we're trying to look at? So GHT, we identified the target population of interest through those exhibiting responsive behaviors, because we had historical data on which residents were engaged with responsive behaviors. So we were able to target those. And we use our point-click care data system, which gives us information from the RI-MDS assessment. And in particular, the scale that we used was the aggressive behavioral scale. And now the aggressive behavioral scale tracks things like residents who are engaged in wandering, those who are verbally responsive, physically responsive, those who are socially inappropriate or are having disruptive sounds, or is resistant to care during care interventions. So using the scale, we were able to see that 103 of 158 residents at the time, so the first 2 quarters, had triggered that scale, and which represented 65.2% of our population at the time. So we found it was very ambitious because we do not have the means to which to engage 103 people at a given time in a research initiative. So we decided to use a subsection or a cluster of that grouping. So we decided to look at residents who are verbally and physically responsive first, using the response analyzer report. So that narrowed it down to only 59 residents of the 158. And we thought that was the ideal population size to look at, because for the actual MCAR, we were only taking a sample of the 59 people, which is, we decided to target 25% of those residents, which is manageable within the current funding and population size that we have. Is there any questions relating to this?
Not so far in the chat.
Okay. So what is our plan? So we recorded pre-intervention ABS, which aggressive behavioral skill scores. So for the first 2 quarters, so from January to July. Then we collected data using a resident preferred music intake forms that the home created. And in that form it talks about, the residents' preferences when they like to be approached. It talks about their musical background, whether they ever played an instrument, sung in a choir, participate or engaged in music of any kind. It also asks whether the resident does not like music, because it's important to know whether a person would have an adverse outcome to music being played as well. But it also gives us insight into what is their preferred music. What is their background? Do they like country? Do they like jazz? Do they like rap? Do they like rock? So it gave us a bit of background. Also, who is their favorite musician or who is their favorite band? So we have a bit of background as to what music should we play to engage resident in care. So that's what we did. We collected information, then we used that information to create playlists. And the playlist was created for specific care context. So for example, like I said, for bathing, we know that we can use this specific music. For toileting, there's this music, or for, dressing. So the care context, we targeted the care context based on the music. Then we loaded the music onto music care devices and made them accessible at point of care. So we're still at the point where we're doing our pilot, but our staff are receiving training from the how to use the device and what is their role in the initiative. And we ask staff that when they play the music, after they've completed the care with the resident, to do a post-care survey. So in the next couple of slides, I'll show you what those tools look like. Post-care survey, and after the pilot is completed, then we have the staff complete a post-intervention survey. So we're hoping this survey will give us more information on the process and how we can improve before we go into rolling out the full MCARP to the full population. So the staff right now are going through the process where we're training staff and rolling into the pilot as we speak.
And Juanne, there is a question.
Okay.
It says here, as for ABS score, is there a certain score threshold that is flagged?
Yes. So because we narrowed it down to residents who are verbally and physically responsive, that's we didn't look at a flag for ABS. We just looked at a subsection of who triggered it. If that answers your question. So we're not actually using the score as an indicator. We're using as what triggered the score as the indicator to be included.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So once the pilot has been completed, we're going to be taking the data we receive. So from the implementation and from the at the point of care survey, as well as post ABS score, to look at the effectiveness of the intervention. Then we hope to adapt and make any modifications that's needed before rolling out to the greater population. Okay. So these are some of the data collection tools we're using. The first one here on your left is the music care referral form. And as I said, the form looks at, it's a 2-page referral. And what we did, we built it into point click here. So we made it accessible at the point of care so that nurses, whoever, patients, families who wanted to refer, anybody who's wanting to refer residents for music care can have that information and collect the data for us. We also took a team approach to dividing and conquering. Members of the site team participated by speaking with residents who were able, as well as their SDMs, to collect information on behalf of the resident. So that's how we're able to get the information we need in order to create the playlist for the resident. The second one is the example of some of the questions that we created to ask staff post-care. It doesn't include everything at this point because we're still we've made a bit of adjustments since then, but to ask staff how the care went with the residents. And the last one is our post-implemented survey, which is a 2-page assessment, really. And it looks at, the staff awareness and understanding, the experience, the application, the impact, the resident impact, what they would change differently, and the overall outcome of the initiative. So these are the forms that we created within the home. We thought it would be essential because we hope to get information from the resident, the staff, and then the greater assessment as to the effectiveness. And we thought that was great to have different impacts at different levels. be included in our analysis section. Is there any questions about the forms?
Not in the chat.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the review portion. So our post-implementation survey will be used alongside the ABS scores from the RAI, but in particular, in the PCC system, we're able to narrow down even to using the resident response analyzer report to see whether the marginal improvement has been made. For example, if a resident prior to the study was, having responsive episodes daily, but then now after the study is having responses 1 to 3 days per week, we're able to see that difference. So in addition to having no behaviors, we can also see, is there an improvement in the frequency of the behaviors you're having during this implementation period. Okay. Is there any questions?
So I'll invite anybody to unmute themselves and then come forward at all. Excellent. Maybe Juanne,
Yeah.
could you dive into what the inspiration was for your team to do this actual MCARP? Like what was the walk us through how you came to this sort of research as a team.
Yes. Because in Ontario, the reason why we decided to do this research in particular as a team is because we have a great population living with dementia within our home. So
Mhm.
in our home, we have, at the time of when we made the decision, we had 65% of our population living with dementia, with another total 75% had some form of cognitive impairment. And because we are looking to launch this department, which are targeting residents and trying to take a non-pharmacological approach to their care, we want to see, okay, could music be used to minimize, resident resident responses without using pharmacological approaches? Because traditionally, when residents are engaging in responsive episodes, the first line would be to use an antipsychotic medication. And we all know about the effects of antipsychotics on humans, right? And it is a hard thing to go through, especially someone who's living with dementia who can't verbalize what they're going through, who's feeling alone and isolated during that point of care. And how do we meet that person without using a medication unless it's necessary? Because honestly, there are some situations where medications are necessary, but there's
Mhm.
other things we can put in place to help reduce those. I
Fantastic.
see. Mm.
Larissa, I think I see you have a question.
Yes. I'm sorry if I missed it, but what technology did you use to get the music? And just in thinking in terms of music royalties, did you use Spotify or
Yes.
I'm trying to
Mhm.
figure out how I can implement it at my site.
Yes. So what we're doing, we purchase music care devices, and we actually have a YouTube music app that is part of that device. So we have a subscription for that. So that's what we're using. So we're using YouTube music to load the playlist onto the device and make them available for the resident.
Thank you.
Mhm. Sorry, I probably should have included that in my presentation. Is there any other questions?
And actually, Juanne, I had a question. Just
Mhm.
because of your nursing background, it might be very intuitive, but for those of
Mhm.
us that aren't nurses or in that role on the staff, what are the impacts of antipsychotics on folks? You
Yes.
sort of said we all know what antipsychotics do, and actually, I was like, I'm not sure. I know exactly what she's talking about. Yeah.
So antipsychotics are very useful because it helps the person to be able to cope with their environmental changes. So there are positive ways. So if someone's having a lot of anxiety, it is very useful for them to take that medication to help them reduce their anxiety and be positively engaged. But there are also times where a resident may be, having increased confusion. It also causes drowsiness. It causes increased risk of falls. So we want to, as Ontario, the goal of the government is to reduce the use of antipsychotics and only provide them to residents who need it. So, for example, if you have a history of, schizophrenic disorder, then yes, you will need it because it helps you to maintain your stability to be positively engaged. Or if you have a history of Huntington's disease, yes, you will need it because it helps you to positively engage with those in your surrounded. But there are opportunities where we as a society can do better in our use of antipsychotics. So that's why as a home, we're trying to look at whether or not there are improvements we can make in reducing those medications by providing, resources residents can be engaged in or positive ways to be engaged with residents. For example, as part of the dementia care department, we hope to, or we're in the process of doing also, in addition to music, using more resources. For example, if you had a history of someone who really enjoyed reading, but now are unable to engage with that independently, providing opportunities to have someone read with you or turn a book as you read or, engage you. Also, if you're someone who likes puzzles, having someone provide an opportunity for you to engage in those same puzzles, perhaps not at the same level you would have in the past, but be able to play a puzzle suited to your needs, whether adapted to your needs. And the same thing with music. Everyone has their own engagement with music throughout their life. Some of the residents, I will say, during the assessments, we learned a lot about residents. For example, some residents who were data specialists or engaged in a lot of research, they didn't like music per se, but they liked nature sounds. So learning that about a resident. So if we play music, so country music, that will make them really upset versus if we're playing sound of rain or sounds of birds chirping and that sort of thing, that relaxed the resident. So that initiative really gave us a lot of information about residents that we otherwise might not have gotten if we didn't choose to research this topic.
Excellent. And there are two questions in the chat. The first one, it says, in the facility,
I'm just gonna stop sharing so
oh yeah,
we can see each other. Sorry.
so that we're bigger faces.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Excellent. There we go.
Okay.
So, and thank you. It's very interesting work what you're doing, really. So the next question is, in the facility I work in, we do a music and memory as part of a recreation therapy intervention. Is there any specific training or certifications that we should have?
That's a good question. I don't even know if I'm the best person to answer that one. But what I will say as a whole, we provide training to all of our staff in GPA, which is gentle persuasive approaches, as well as dementability methods. So dementability methods is a more of an emotion strength enabling approach to care. And we find staff have had great success going through that training. And because of that, they have the comfort level, or at least the baseline, to approach a resident. So that's something that we did as a home prior to implementing this initiative. So all of our staff are trained in dementability and GPA, and our dementia care staff will also get specialized training in UFIRST pieces and BSO foundation, depending on their role.
And I also think this is a music care hosted event, so I'll just jump right in as director of
Yes.
programs and say, you know what? The MCARP was developed through the music care certification as well as our music care training, which is foundational. So our music care training level 1 actually provides caregivers with 10 strategies that they can implement right away. So if you go in, I'll type into the chat, but if you go into musiccare.org/learn, you'll be able to see on our platform our different training and educational programs. And I would suggest that our music care training level 1 would support different strategies or a skills day for recreation therapists. So that's awesome. That's the first question. Stuart asks, can ballet dancing help? I'm asking because I'm a bit of a ballet dancer. Thank you for sharing that, Stuart. That's fantastic. So Juanne, your thoughts on ballet or dance and music?
Yes, definitely. We do have quite a few of our residents who come from a dance background. We've had residents who, through the intake process, we learned used to be very accomplished dancers. and whether it be professional level or just for, self-care measures. So we found out a lot about that too, Stuart. So thank you for that. But yes, dancing does play a great role, because what we found, even with some of the other music care initiatives we take care in the home, for example, we have hymn sings, but we also have sing-alongs and karaoke, and we also have concerts. And during the summer, we did quite a bit of work having a concert where every weekend we had a different concert happening within the home series. And residents were engaged and dancing, and there was a lot of, interaction. We also have music in the garden, so residents go outside. There's music outside, so of course dancing plays a big role. So of course, thank you so much for that question.
Fantastic. And then the third one, was there ever a time in your research, so going back to your presentation, Juanne, was there
Mhm.
ever a time in the research when the music increased challenging behaviors?
Yes, for sure. There's a few residents who we identified based on our intake form that we thought would not do well being included in the study. So we did, as for resident comfort and levels of safety, remove them just because of their preferences. For example, we had a resident who was a very accomplished musician. So to hear music where at just the stage of his life where he is in, where he's not able to engage in it as he would have liked to, actually triggered more of a response from him because it upset him remembering that loss. So of course, you have to look at the resident and looking at them holistically, and how do you support them? Because overall, our goal is to support the resident and not to make things worse, right? So we definitely had to look at a few residents and say, okay, is this the right thing for them? And it's not the right thing for everybody. But also adapting, like I said, the type of music depending on the person. So we did that a lot, quite a bit of a lot in our study,
Mhm.
because there's a few residents who really don't like traditional music in this forms of, instruments and singing, but they like music, natural sounds in the
Mhm.
forms of nature, or walking, or even the sounds of birds. So we adapted a lot based on their preference.
And can I just ask before we go to the next question, how did staff communicate that information to each other?
Yes. So the reason, but before we even created the playlist, we actually went to the resident. So we went to the residents who were capable of advocating for their own selves and talk to them about their music. Most residents were able to tell us their preferences, able to tell us the things that they like. And then those who could not tell us, then we tried to reach out to their families. And their families were a good source. So once the families were on board and gave us the information, the next thing we did was create music care plans. And that's what they took the information to. We created music care plans where it's accessible to everybody. So it's not just the people involved in the project who knew the music they like, but it's every staff at the point of care had access to looking up what is it that this resident enjoys. And we have as a home something we call a teletalk that we do to staff, and it's a way of communicating to our staff about all the things that are happening with the home. So we would do weekly teletalks that goes out to our staff saying, okay, this is what we're doing. We've collected information. This is where the information can be found. So staff are aware of where to look for information about residents. So it was a full, team approach to making sure that it's communicated, but also having part of Certify, we have a music care board, like a board in the midst of our chapel, which is the heart of our home. That's posted with all the things that are happening. So staff had access to music information all the time. So whether it's on the board, through our teletalks communication, through our point of care documentation, or through posters in the staff room and stuff, they were well aware of what was going on.
Fantastic.
Mhm.
Excellent. And then another question, do you think this type of intervention would be successful for clients who are still living in their home and have a spouse or child as a caregiver? With increased wait times for long-term care, we're finding that there are more responsive behaviors happening because of caregiver burnout.
Yes, for sure. And the funny thing is, because of this initiative, it's very easy to implement this because honestly, the family are probably more familiar with what the residents' favorite music is already, but it's just, giving them enabling them with the skills needed to do this at home. I think this would be great at home because originally, honestly, even when I talk to some of the families, to be honest, they already have some playlist music created. They said, "Hey, this is what my mom likes. I have a CD. Do you want me to bring it in?" So the
Mhm.
family were familiar and just talking to them about why you're doing it and how it's going to benefit their loved one. So that was very successful on our end too.
Wonderful, wonderful. Um, Another question. I'm curious if you have a certified music therapist consulting with or leading this program. And then there's a second question, but we'll deal with
Okay.
that first. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So our home, because we are a Christian organization, so we're a specialized home, we do have a chaplain on site, but we're blessed to have a chaplain who is a professional musician as well. So in addition to being a chaplain, she also has a master's in theology, but she's also a level 8, I believe, violin player in theory and I don't know, practice. The musicians will probably tell me more, but she
Yeah.
has extensive training on violin, and she also has a bachelor's in counseling. So how to interpret and the response of others, and how to meet them at the point of their needs. So of course she was the one that we were looking through as, okay, what do you suggest in this case, or is this good in this case? And with every referral intake we took, that she also looked over them. So she would look over the intake forms and will say, okay, for this person, this is what I suggest. For this person, this is not good. Please, let's do this instead. So of course, we consulted with her throughout the process.
Yes, and I would say too, in our training, just because, Music Care, our organization provides the training, we're very, very clear that, and respectful that music therapy is a clinical practice of its own. So, this is not music therapy. Music
Mm-mm.
therapy is a clinical practice that is by a certified music therapist. So, driver through interprofessional practice in the organization, that part has to be cleared through Room 217. So, and most of a large selection of our instructors actually on our team are music therapists. So anyway, I'm just also addressing that question, the first part of that question,
Mhm.
from our organization as well as developing this program. So we want to be very clear and respectful to the practice of music therapy. And then the second part, also, did your facility apply to have this dementia program? Can other facilities in Ontario apply? Is it only funded through government because of increased dementia within the population or by grants? So I guess a funding question.
Okay. Thank you so much for that question, actually.
Mhm.
So we didn't apply for this program. It's created within our existing portfolios. But what it is that the government also, right now, I think the deadline might be the end of this week. They're providing additional funding of $3 million to homes across Ontario to expand their dementia care program. So there is an opportunity to apply through Ontario Health for that. And there's also, this might have closed already. Sorry, the dementia care is $8 million, and the other one was $3 million, which was the local priorities fund. So those two things gives additional funding for homes
Mhm.
wishing to roll out that sort of thing. But what we did as a home in our case, we use our direct care hours to fund staff who are specifically for dementia care, because we've had such a high population of residents living with dementia. So part of our direct care hours for the home went towards catering for residents living with dementia.
Wonderful. And the local priorities fund, that has to be applied through a care home, correct? So I think it's you directly apply for that funding through a long-term care, for example, home.
Yeah. So it's a funding available through Ontario Health, and it's sent out to long-term care homes to
Mhm.
apply. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Great questions. Thanks,
Yeah.
Melissa, for that. Wonderful. All right. And any other questions as we're rounding out the last part of the session? What I did want to share, just this came up at the masterclass, and I will share just my screen here. The question about dance. is an interesting one. And so I just wanted to bring to your attention, I'll put also this link in the chat, but the National Ballet partnered with Baycrest and did some really interesting work on sharing dance. So, and also, so you can go to the National Ballet's website directly, or you can go to this link, which I'll share. And I believe they offer free resources that you can connect to in terms of or connecting to dance. So I'll just put that in the chat as an extra resource. I love these questions that come forward because it also helps us learn what's out there as a collective. Excellent. And so just to round us out, what are next steps for your team, Juanne? You know, you've done you're doing this MCARB. What do you see in terms of future and application post?
Yes. So if we do see that this is providing meaningful connection to residents, we hope to roll it out to the rest of our resident population living with dementia. So it's not just going to be residents who are responsive, having a responsive episode, but everyone has the opportunity to engage in music. So we're starting small because we have the human health resource need to build up that capacity. But once we have started, we want to target every single resident across the home, finding out more about their music preferences and making it available at the point of need. So, even us as individuals, we have the capacity and ability to go pick up our phones and listen to music at any time that we want, but not everyone has that ability. And we want to be, as caregivers, supportive of their need in making sure music is accessible for everybody, no matter where they are and where they are in their life. So that's where our home is taking this, that eventually every single resident in the home will have their own music care plan and a list of music that staff can make available for them.
Fantastic. And just before we exit, I forgot to ask too. I was curious if there were any learnings that you could share through the process, to
Mhm.
other people have expressed interest that, oh, this might be useful or helpful, if we implemented this or if I use this method. Are there any learnings you had a team that you would share with us that you might do differently or would be nice to know before you go down this pathway?
Yes. One of the things we really learned as a team is that on admission, um, I know from speaking to families, there was a lot of information that was shared at admission.
Mhm.
So I've learned that that's probably not the best time to get all the information that we need in terms of being able to support people. So staggering the information because it also helps the families and residents to adjust better. We learned that through this process. So perhaps doing the things that are essential first, and then over the next couple of weeks, collecting additional information as we go. But we found that the music care plan is something that's very essential because, having the music accessible, we've seen so much joy across resident faces. So residents who ordinarily would not engage or would not talk or participate in anything, by bringing music to them, even within their rooms or where they are, they have such a boost of happiness that it's so like it warms my heart to see that people start talking, they start sharing about their favorite bands, they talk to you about people like they used to play piano that we didn't know about, like I did you know that I play guitar, that I was the first in my family to ever go to music school. There's so much you learn about a resident through engaging in this process. So even if you don't implement an MCARP or something like that, just finding out information about resident related to their musical background, that in itself is beneficial because it promotes a point of connection, a point of engaging with that person about their who they are as a person. And it's amazing to see how many residents come alive just in conversation about their favorite music.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you. It's very inspirational work. I do see in the chat here. Stuart has provided his email address that you can take from the chat and also an invitation to further maybe present this.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, he is saying,
Thank you, Stuart.
yeah, he's saying, excellent. Thank you for that. And there is one other question coming forward, is how are you dealing with care staff that are not willing to implement the music? Some care staff have not been using the music with the residents as they feel it's extra work. So how have you been able to mitigate that challenge of it being, maybe overwhelming to a care staff?
So the reason why we actually have not had many of those incidents is because we sought staff buy-in from the front. So including staff as part of the process in building this program is what we found was very effective in minimizing the I guess the resistance because the staff were the ones who were able to say, hey, this is what I'm doing with this person. Maybe if we share it with this staff, then everyone can do this too. So they were bringing ideas forward to us. And because we were saying, okay, this is what the home hopes to do. You guys are the experts. You guys know the resident more than us. You spend a lot more time with them than I do. What are your suggestions? That really changed the narrative. So we've not had a lot of staff who said, oh, that's not good, because then they see the benefit. Because when they do play the music, they see the residents more relaxed. They're engaged in care. They can about the music. They talk about their favorite bands. They talk about their own favorite music with the resident in the point of care. It actually makes the care go faster and easier. So that's we've not had it. So I can't say that we have had to overcome that barrier.
Wonderful. And I think too, what we've known just in our own training and working with a multitude of different organizations, where sometimes we know, we're doing a training and some people may have been voluntold, it may have, been told to them, and that's a real reality. But what we've noticed through the certified program is, Juanne, you talked about music becoming a point of joy, that when it's implemented and the trainings happened and you're actually facilitating and the programs are going, we actually find that once it's in action, there's an actual shift from folks that might have been hesitant or resistant at first, because it's actually making their job easier in some ways, if because music can reduce those behaviors. And if music is reducing those behaviors, then it's actually reducing staff stress. And I would say that was the full, the Alzheimer's Society of Peel, that was that was their case study in their adult day program, was that, creating a sound goal as a team actually increased engagement in programming by 70% or 75%, I think it was. And then that reduced wandering by 40%. And because of both of those things happening, increased engagement, less wandering, then staff stress was reduced by 50%. So I think just also to answer that question, I found that there was a lot more buy-in after the actual results of joy and calm, actually happened. And then
I will say one more thing,
yeah,
John, about
yeah,
that
yeah,
is
yeah,
that
yeah.
prior to the home even taking on the MCARP initiative as a project, we
Mhm,
were having musical activities throughout the home, and we
mhm,
did really try our best to also include our staff. So
mhm,
if we're having a concert, we send an email out or a text out to all staff. Hey, you're welcome to come. Bring your families too. You're included as part of this population. We want you to engage in music too. So
mhm.
doing not just looking at our resident population or our families, but also targeting your staff. Hey, we're
Mhm.
having this, concert coming up. Yeah, I know that some of you might be off. This is something great to take your kids to. So including them as part of the population that you're targeting helped a lot to when we did get to the point to implement the end part, they already felt a part of it. So
Amazing. Thank you for that. Yes, I'm going to pop the case study, Allison Thompson. I'll pop the case study into the chat before we leave. And I wanted to also say just one thing. There was a question about music therapy, and we're very excited to say that Kindera Living was a provider group that certified several of their homes. I think we're up to nine, nine homes, correct? And the amazing thing for music therapy is that music therapy was increased in all of those care homes. So there is, Juanne talked about how they had addressed the professional practice, or the which is one of the drivers in the organizational home. But also that can be done with music therapy. And so I just want to say that Certify Org, that we actually promote and provide pathways, for care homes to actually bring in a music therapist, and also identify the difference between, rec therapist or rec teams, being trained in music care strategies versus the clinical practice of a music therapist. So I just want to be really clear about, that differentiation. We're highly
yeah.
supportive of Driver 3 being reached through professional practice through a music therapist. But I will share that link as I promised. If we all hold. Actually, what I'll do is share my screen and show everybody how you can find it.
Mhm.
Would that be good? Because this is actually the program that Juanne has implemented, is Music Care. So if you go to musiccare.org, folks, and you scroll, you go to programs, click on certify, and you can scroll down and see the video on organizations. There's two links I can actually show you. You can read, it says here, read ASP's case study. If I click on that, is the case study coming up? Yeah, okay, great. Thanks for the nod there, Jill. So this is the case study I was talking about. And if you look at page 3, here it is, 75%, 40, and 50% is right there on the page. So again, going to musiccare.org, hitting programs down to certify, and then scrolling down, and you can click on read ASPs, Alzheimer's Society of Peel. I also will share this one, Kindera Living. This is a really incredible one, a provider group. And if you turn to page 3, it talks about expressive behaviors being reduced by personal care time, sorry, by preferred music through personal care time by 78%. It talks about other dining experiences, sleep, honor songs. So this is quite an extensive report on the certification program, should you want to read it. And there are touch points about music therapy in that Kindera report. So on that note, if have we addressed all the questions?
I just want to pop in for a second
Yeah.
and just look at Alison Thompson's questions because it's really good. It's really dealing with the logistics. So she's asking if some residents use earphones during care or do you have speakers? And if so, was that part of your budget that you had to request or part of that portfolio that you talk about? It's like getting those nitty-gritty questions about how you roll a program like this out is just so important.
Thanks, Jill. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for that question as well, Allison, and thank you, Jill. So we actually were very specific on which devices we purchased. So we purchased devices that can be used. It has its own built-in speaker, or it could be used with headphones. So it could be used with both. So depending on the resident, they can get a headphone, or it can be played directly from the device without a headphone. So it does have a built-in speaker with the device. And they were reasonably priced. I think the device we went with, it was maybe $56 from Amazon. It wasn't expensive, and it was a device that was elderly friendly that could be used. So it wasn't very expensive, the device itself. And yeah, so we did think about whether to use headphones, and we decided not to because depending on the situation, you want to have the ability to play the music without having to put a headphone on somebody.
It's also nice for the caregiver to interact with the music as well,
Mhm.
like to talk about it and to dance with them and to, music becomes that relational point. So it's
Exactly.
great for caregivers and care recipients to be listening to the same piece.
Thank you so much. So, and thank you for catching that last question that I didn't catch there, Jill. And I just, to address the what about dance therapy, I just want to also put a link into Maya Creative Care. They are the creative arts therapist or therapy company. They have services that address that in Ontario. So I just dropped that link. They're one of our partners. Um, and uh, and on that note, wonderful questions. Thank you to everyone, and thank you to Juanne. We can't wait to see more from your team at some point in the future. It's so inspiring. Yes, and thank you, Stuart, for your dance questions. And I bid everybody a wonderful rest of your afternoon. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your day.